Hi and welcome, I'm Anewz and you are watching Anewz. Here are the headlines. Doha hosts emergency Arab-Islamic Summit to discuss the Israeli strike on Qatar. Polish president approves NATO troop deployment, strengthening the country's defense. U.S. and Chinese delegations hold second day of trade talks in Spain. Thank you for tuning in. We're starting in Doha, where the emergency summit of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the Arab League gathered more than 50 leaders and diplomats to formulate a response to last week's Israeli attack on Hamas leadership in the Qatari capital. The bombing that killed 6 people was widely and harshly condemned, with some of the nations calling for practical measures. Let's take a look at how the summit unfolded.
World leaders have convened in Doha for a high-stakes gathering. Heads of states assembled in the Qatari capital for an extraordinary summit of the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in response to what it called Israeli aggression. Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim Al Thani opened the emergency summit, condemning the attack.
If Israel wants to assassinate Hamas's political leadership, why is it negotiating with them? And if it wants to negotiate for the release of hostages, why is it assassinating everyone with whom it could negotiate? And how are we supposed to receive in our country Israeli delegations for negotiations, while those who sent these delegations are planning to bomb this country? This aggression is truly vile, treacherous, and cowardly, and it's impossible to deal with this level of malice and betrayal.
Among the attendants, the Turkish president, who urged the region to become self-sufficient.
We must improve diplomatic efforts to increase pressure against Israel. International law mechanisms must be used to hold Israeli authorities to account. If we don't impose sanctions on Israel, it will continue and speed up its policy of occupation.
Iran, which struck a base in Qatar in June, also sent a delegation. After the U.S. bombed Iranian nuclear sites that month, Tehran retaliated against the Al Udeid airbase in Qatar, a major hub for American forces, angering Doha. Still, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian attended Monday's meeting, condemning Israel's action in Doha, calling it a shameless crime. The summit was called after Israel carried out a strike on Doha last Tuesday, targeting Hamas officials engaged in ceasefire talks. The attack killed 5 Hamas members and a Qatari security officer, but missed the senior Hamas negotiation team. The strike sparked outrage across the Middle East, and analysts say that this summit could mark the first time Arab and Islamic states take tangible collective action against Israel.
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem, reaffirming what both officials called an unshakable alliance. The two held a 2-hour meeting before telling reporters they would act together to protect each other, even as regional anger mounts over Israel's strike on Doha last week. As Arab and Muslim leaders gathered in Qatar to denounce the assault, Rubio leaned firmly into Israel's stance, saying Hamas must cease to exist. Rubio is also set to visit Qatar.
And I want to ask if you still think that
the war in Gaza has affected foreign relations not only through diplomacy, but culture and arts as well. Several European countries have said they will boycott the continent's Eurovision Song Contest if Israel is allowed to compete. Netherlands was the last to join the group. Our Anita Sharma has the details.
Hello and welcome to This Day in Europe, where a lighthearted cultural event becomes a flashpoint for political controversy. The Netherlands is the latest country to say it will not take part in next year's Eurovision Song Contest if Israel is allowed to compete. The decision adds to mounting pressure from broadcasters across Europe concerned about ongoing conflicts in Gaza. Dutch public broadcaster Afro-Tros says it will boycott Eurovision 2026 in Vienna should Israel participate. Their statement cites, quote, the ongoing and severe human suffering in Gaza, plus concerns over press freedom, including restrictions on international journalists and the deaths of media professionals in the conflict. The Netherlands joins Ireland and Slovenia among the countries that have made similar conditional boycott threats. Spain says its participation depends on how the European Broadcasting Union, or EBU, handles Israel's inclusion. The EBU says it understands the depth of concern and is currently consulting its members. A final decision on Israel's participation is expected by mid-December, when broadcasters formally confirm their entries. Irish broadcaster RTE calls Israel's participation unconscionable given the weight of civilian loss, echoing widespread concern about normalization of conflict. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez also criticizes Israel's inclusion, comparing it to past exclusions of other countries in response to geopolitical or human rights issues. He has pushed for the EBU to adopt consistent standards. Some smaller broadcasters and nations are watching closely, struggling with the idea of participating in a competition that may be seen as endorsing or ignoring ongoing conflicts. Others warn that pulling out of huge cultural events risks undermining the very platform that Eurovision represents, one of diversity, unity, and freedom of expression. Eurovision has often tried to position itself as apolitical, a celebration of music across borders. But over recent years, politics have increasingly intruded, especially when countries at war or those accused of human rights violations are involved. At this year's Eurovision competition in Switzerland, Israel won second place, but its participation drew protests. Meanwhile, over 70 former Eurovision contestants have signed open letters asking for Israel's exclusion from future contests, citing concerns over votes, political messaging, and fairness. The contest in Vienna next May will mark Eurovision's 70th edition. The Netherlands' boycott threat over Eurovision isn't just about music. It's a symbol of how deeply inhibited the separation between culture and politics has become in today's Europe. As broadcasters take stands and the EBU grapples with how to balance inclusion, fairness, and human rights, how this is resolved will matter far beyond the stage in Vienna. It'll test whether popular culture can remain a neutral space or whether it inevitably becomes a site of moral and geopolitical reckoning. For Anewz, I'm Anita Sharma, reporting from Arnhem, Netherlands.
Back to our top story to talk on the emergency Arab-Islamic Summit and the messages we've heard out of Doha. We're joined by Nizar Dahan, international humanitarian activist, coming to us from Swansea. Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, before we get to the core messages from Doha, let's start with the summit itself. In less than a week since the attack, we now see the leaders and officials of more than 50 nations gathered in Qatar. What do you make of that?
Hello, thank you for having me. To be honest, it's too little, too late. Why has it taken 2 years of genocide and slaughter and the killing of innocent Palestinians, but now within a week of Qatar being hit, the Arab leaders and the Muslim leaders can suddenly all come together and talk about a solution or talk about replying or responding? This was inevitable from the beginning. If Israel has been allowed with impunity to target, to kill, to maim, to ethnically cleanse and to displace the Palestinians, what makes any other nation, including neighboring nations, think that this couldn't happen to them? And as we've seen, Israel has happily bombed 7 countries within the space of 48 hours, reaching as far as Malta for the Freedom Flotilla and Tunisia as well.
Well, I must say that Israel denies all the allegations for genocide or intentionally targeting civilians. Back to the summit, Qatar's emir said the attack aimed to derail the ceasefire talks, and also that Israeli prime minister's, and I'm quoting here, dreams of turning the Arab region into the Israeli sphere of influence are a dangerous illusion. What are your thoughts on the organizers' message?
I mean, that's very clear. That's been very clear from the offset. Israel has no interest in peace. Israel has no interest in returning the hostages. Israel do not hold life as valuable, whether it's Palestinian life or even their own expendable people. Israel has a plan for domination. It's been very clear by all of the politicians in the Knesset, in the Likud party, and under that ethnic cleansing is the goal. Now, whether it's some debate, and Israel, of course, will deny it, but the whole world has woken up to the reality of Israeli crimes. The whole world is standing united, including European countries and former allies of Israel. They can see clearly what the plan is, and the plan is not for peace or for negotiations. And I think this is just a kick in the teeth to anybody that actually believed that peace was something that Israelis are interested in. Netanyahu has been saying this for a very long time. They're going to take Gaza. Smotrich has said the same. Ben Gvir has said the same. Many Israeli political analysts and people in society that are held with high regard in Israel have all said the same thing. They are going to take Gaza. No Palestinians are welcome there. If that's not ethnic cleansing and genocide, according to the Genocide Convention, according to international law, according to the ICC and the ICJ, then I'm sorry, I think the definition needs to be redefined. Israel can deny all they want, but the evidence, the rhetoric, the intention, and their actions only point towards genocide.
Well, for some other messages we've heard out of Doha, Egypt's president said Israel's current actions hinder any chances of new peace treaties in the Middle East. Iranian president called for unity in standing up to Israel. Turkish president called for practical measures and economic cornering of Israel. Based on everything we've seen, do you see actual sanctions happening, be it by individual countries or groups of them?
To be honest, I think that it's too late for sanctions. There needs to be military intervention. There needs to be a peacekeeping delegation of military forces from around the world to intervene like they have done in many other conflicts around the world. The Palestinian people are being exterminated. What use are sanctions? There were sanctions put on Russia as well. Has that stopped the conflict? Has that slowed it down? Sanctions are not enough. Israel needs to be held account. The war criminals in the Israeli cabinet need to be held to account. They need to be arrested, they need to be presented before The Hague, and they need to be prosecuted for the crimes they are committing. Ethnic cleansing, settlement building, war crimes, starvation, collective punishment. These are all crimes under international law. And these are all verified crimes according to everybody that have been committed against the Palestinian people. So I don't feel that sanctions now are going to do anything. There needs to be brute force used against a nation or a state that only understands brute force. And sadly, the Palestinians are the ones that are paying for this. Every time something happens in Qatar or somewhere else, the Palestinians are getting massacred, hundreds every single day, tents, safe zones, people are being slaughtered and butchered. Sanctions are not going to help. It needs to be military intervention, and there needs to be a stop put to the war crimes of the Israeli regime. They need to be dismantled, and they need to be stopped. It's a reality.
Well, once again, I just have to point out for our viewers, Israel denies all allegations of committing war crimes. Now, we've seen U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio with Benjamin Netanyahu. He's set to visit Qatar next. What kind of a welcome do you see him getting in Doha following the summit?
I'm not too sure, to be honest, but you know, it's pretty obvious that America is going to back Israel until the very end. They're not going to change their mind, no matter what heinous crimes Israel commit, no matter what atrocities they commit. America will back them 100%. So I think this is just a formality, going to show and save face and to pretend that they want to resolve this. However, Israel is still acting with full impunity. Israel is supported by the United States in anything and everything that they do. There was a video 2 or 3 weeks ago where Donald Trump came out and he said, now they need to forget, I'm misquoting this, but in essence, they said, now we need to not be concerned too much about the hostages. They need to go in and finish the job. What kind of message is that from somebody who is apparently taking part in a process to try and end this conflict and bring resolution to the region by giving Netanyahu the green light, even though whether he had that green light or not, he's still continuing and he's never stopped. So him, Rubio, going to Qatar is, I really don't know what the purpose of that visit is. Unless something is done to stop Israel from what they are doing in Palestine, all of these meetings, all of these discussions, all of this diplomacy doesn't mean anything. Ultimately, Palestinian children, women, men, elderly, disabled, every single day in their hundreds, at food distributions are being sniped, are being shot, are being bombed. And this is all facts. This is nothing that Israel can deny. Even people that were part of these food distributions from the United States and even people from within Israel have said that this is what's happening at these distributions. So, saying that Israel deny this, we could say the same about Russia denying this. We could say the same about ISIS denying this, all of that. But the facts are there for everybody to see. And the crimes are happening live on our screens every single day. And nothing is being done to stop them.
Nizar, thank you for joining us and sharing your views and opinions.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to the Zapad 2025, the ongoing joint military exercise between Russian and Belarusian forces. Russia's defense ministry released footage from the drills showing a missile launched vertically from a frigate before angling off into the horizon. According to the ministry, the drills included the coastal missile system, with military helicopters providing fire support to assault groups. Baltic Fleet forces also practiced emergency rescue operations for ships. In a separate video from Belarus, soldiers were shown setting up command posts and securing communication centers at the Borisovsky training range. The drills are set to run through September 16th. Polish President Karol Nawrocki has signed an agreement allowing NATO troops to be stationed in the country as part of the Eastern Sentry operation. The specific arrangements and details of the deployment decision are confidential and will not be disclosed. Eastern Sentry is designed to bolster the alliance's eastern flank, with a particular focus on air defenses. The announcement came just days after Poland said 19 Russian drones had entered its airspace. Meanwhile, Moscow maintains that its drones had targeted military facilities in western Ukraine, adding that there were no intentions to strike locations in Poland. The cheaply made drones that Warsaw says were Russian breached NATO airspace, revealing a major gap in the alliance's defense. Politico writes that NATO's expensive air defense systems may not be well suited to counter such threats.
NATO's response to low-cost Russian drones has exposed weaknesses in the alliance's air defences, says Politico. Last week, at least 19 drones crossed into Poland, prompting fighter jets, Patriot missiles and surveillance aircraft, a multi-billion-dollar effort to counter drones that cost roughly $10,000 each. Experts say NATO's current approach isn't sustainable. Scrambling F-16 or F-35s every time a cheap drone appears is costly and impractical. Politico reports the alliance now needs practical, cost-effective anti-drone systems, instead of relying solely on high-end jets or missile defences. By contrast, Ukraine achieves an 80 to 90% interception rate using thousands of low-cost interceptor drones produced domestically. Military personnel also uses electronic countermeasures and coordinated night operations to handle hundreds of drones at once. Air defense has long been a capability gap for NATO countries. Systems like the U.S. Patriot or Franco-Italian SAMP-T cost hundreds of millions each, making them unsuitable for frequent low-cost threats. The issue was also raised during a NATO briefing in Brussels, where diplomats confirmed to Politico that frequent low-cost drone incursions expose the alliance's lack of preparedness.
Elon Musk's satellite internet service Starlink was back online for most users after a brief outage on Monday. With nearly 40,000 users reporting issues, Starlink confirmed the disruption. Outage reports came from multiple U.S. states and countries like Ukraine, with some users regaining access after brief interruptions. Some 60% of the reported problems related to issues with the internet, while almost 40% cited a total blackout. Following a new round of U.S. China trade talks in Madrid, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said a framework for a TikTok deal has been reached. Final details are expected after Presidents Donald Trump and Xi Jinping speak on Friday.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said on Monday that a framework for a TikTok deal had been reached in Madrid, paving the way for the app's shift to U.S. ownership. He added that final details would be determined when President Donald Trump speaks with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Friday. Trump had hinted earlier in a Truth Social post that young Americans would be very happy with the outcome. The announcement came as U.S. and Chinese delegations met in Madrid for a fourth round of negotiations in 4 months. Washington has warned it will proceed with a ban on TikTok unless its Chinese parent company ByteDance divests ownership and Beijing eases demands on tariffs and technology restrictions. Prior to the second day of talks, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said both sides had made good progress on technical details, but stressed that Washington would not trade away national security for a social media app. Beijing, meanwhile, denounced U.S. pressure tactics as economic coercion and accused Washington of violating prior consensus between the two leaders. Talks are unfolding against a wider backdrop of tariffs, rare earth restrictions, and U.S. curbs on Chinese chip makers. China has responded with its own investigations, including a new probe into U.S. giant Nvidia. The Madrid discussions are set to wrap up this Wednesday.
Foreign Ministry of Turkey has marked the 107th anniversary of Baku's liberation, extending their congratulations to the Azerbaijani people. In a statement, Ankara said the struggle for independence remains a shared pride and paid tribute to those who gave their lives for freedom. The ministry added that their sacrifice will always be remembered with mercy, gratitude, and respect, underlining the historic bond between Turkey and Azerbaijan. The liberation of Baku remains a symbol of unity, sacrifice, and the enduring spirit of the Azerbaijani people. Let's dive into this chapter of history and see how it helped shape the capital of Azerbaijan as we know it today.
Baku, known as the City of Winds, has long been at the center of political storms along the Caspian shores. If we look back 107 years, the city was gripped by chaos and uncertainty as multiple powers fought for control over its strategic and symbolic importance. Azerbaijan declared its independence from Tsarist Russia during the political chaos of World War I, while the new republic was announced in Tbilisi on May 28, 1918. Its most vital city, Baku, remained under Bolshevik control. Meanwhile, the newly established Azerbaijani Republic knew it could not survive without Baku. The city was the economic and strategic heart of the nation. But facing the 18,000-strong Baku Soviet troops, Azerbaijan's small national army of 600 soldiers stood little chance on its own. In search of support, Azerbaijani leaders turned to the Ottoman Empire. On June 4, 1918, both governments signed the Treaty of Mutual Assistance and Friendship. In response, Enver Pasha sent his brother, Nuru Pasha, along with the Caucasian Islamic Army to help Azerbaijan. On June 10th, Bolshevik and Armenian Dashnak forces launched an attack toward Ganja, which had become the temporary seat of the Azerbaijani government after Tbilisi. Between June 27th and July 1st, the crucial battles near Goyche turned the tide. The Caucasian Islamic Army stopped the advance and began moving toward Baku. Towns like Goyche, Kurdamir, Agsu, and Shamaki were liberated one after another. Back in Baku, Bolshevik policies were losing support. On July 31st, the Baku Soviet resigned. A new power, the Central Caspian Dictatorship, was declared on August 1st, supported by Mensheviks, socialist revolutionaries, and Dashnaks. Soon after, a new foreign player entered the scene, the British. On August 4th, British troops under General Lionel Dunsterville arrived in Baku. Their goal was clear, secure the city's oil and stop the advancing Islamic army. By this time, the Ottoman Azerbaijani forces had already launched several failed attempts to liberate Baku. Finally, on the night of September 14th, the joint forces launched a successful offensive. Dunsterville's troops evacuated Baku and left for Anzali. On September 15th, the final battles were short. The Central Caspian dictatorship was defeated and Baku was liberated. The price of victory was high. The Ottoman army alone lost 1,130 soldiers in the operation. But the result was historic. On September 16th, a grand military parade was held in honor of the Turkish-Azerbaijani victory. Soon after, the capital of the Azerbaijan Democratic Republic was moved from Ganja to Baku, marking the true beginning of state building in Azerbaijan. Though Azerbaijan would lose its independence to the Soviet Union less than 2 years later, the Battle of Baku was a defining moment. It showed the strength and determination of a young nation. Even after decades under Soviet rule, the memory of this victory lived on. And after 70 years, Azerbaijan once again rose to reclaim its sovereignty.
Joining us to talk on the events from more than a century ago and their impact even today is Togrul Valikanli of the STEM Analytical Center in Baku. Welcome, thank you for joining. How much of the Baku liberation, its ideas, spirit and efforts, would you say can be felt in the country now, even more than 100 years later?
Good evening, thank you. The liberation of Baku carried on 15 September in 1918, in accordance with a friendship treaty which was signed between Ottoman Empire and the Republic of Azerbaijan on 4th June. Ottoman troops began to deploy to the aid of Azerbaijan, and the rapid and successful counter-offensive of the Ottoman and Azerbaijani soldiers, which fighting side by side, led by General Nuru Pasha, shattered the ambitions of Bolshevik Dashnak occupants, and the victory of 15 September caused a political some kind of storm. Previously, Baku Soviet voted to invite British troops, and as a result, limited British contingent under the command of General Dunsterville arrived in Baku in order to prevent the advancing of Turks. And but the very same day, the British contingent and the troops of Central Caspian dictatorship left. To summarize, the main goal or the main objective of newly established Azerbaijani state was to ensure territorial integrity and sovereignty. And Azerbaijan Democratic Republic guaranteed its authority across the entire country. And interestingly, all of this happened during the First World War, which caused the significant changings in the international affairs, and we can see that the founding of League of Nations which is considered to be the predecessor of the United Nations, and it was the first intergovernmental organization founded by Paris Peace Conference. And by the way, Azerbaijan de facto was recognized as a state by the Allied Council of this peace conference. After we can see the collapse of world empires, or especially in the European region, like Austro-Hungarian Empire, Ottoman Empire, and even German Empire, and the rising of nation states, and establishing of Versailles system in the international affairs framework. But there one interesting issue that this victory, common victory, illustrates the vibrant example of brotherhood between Azerbaijan and Turkey, which continues nowadays. I mean, it's some. We can consider this in the frame of collective defense, because even nowadays the imperialistic ambitions of Russian side continues to expand, and for Russia, South Caucasus region Russia doesn't exclude South Caucasian region from a geopolitical zone of influence.
Thank you so much for such a detailed account of the events, and linking it to today's state of affairs.
Thank you.
Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev has said justice has been restored in Karabakh and displaced citizens are returning home. Speaking to residents of Hojali villages, Aliyev spoke on large-scale reconstruction and peace efforts.
Azerbaijan ended the Armenian occupation, put an end to separatism, restored justice, and today we are building and creating in Karabakh. President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev said this in a meeting with residents from the Khojali villages. Aliyev emphasized that the government has created all the necessary conditions for Karabakh residents.
The people who lived as refugees for so many years deserve the very best conditions. I recall saying in my numerous meetings with refugees during the years of occupation that the government was doing everything possible to provide for you. And we did that. Approximately 300,000 former IDPs were provided with houses and apartments by the state. But I always said at the opening of each tent camp that these were only temporary places of residence. After the liberation of Karabakh, we would create even better living conditions in Karabakh itself. And that is exactly what has happened.
Azerbaijani leader also mentioned that the victory was secured by the will of people, their deep attachment to their homeland, our collective resolve, and our fighting spirit. According to Aliyev's words, by forcing the Armenians to sign the act of capitulation, Azerbaijan also paved the way for peace.
For 17 years, I held talks with the leaders of Armenia, trying to convince them that if they did not vacate our lands voluntarily, war would be inevitable. But they did not believe it.
Onlar hesap edirdiler ki bu olmayacak. Hesap edirdiler ki onların arkasında duran büyük devletler, güçler onlara.
They thought that the great powers behind them, those who gave them weapons, money, and political support, would protect them forever.
Ama hesaplamıyorlar düzgün. Bizim irademizi hesaplayabilmemiştiler. Ama ben defalarla onlara demiştim ki öz hoşunuzla çıkın.
but they miscalculated our resolve. I told them many times, leave our lands of your own free will. Even after the Second Karabakh War, after our glorious victory, after the liberation of Shusha, I told them there was no place for separatism in Azerbaijan. They should abide by Azerbaijan's laws, accept Azerbaijani citizenship, and live here in peace. No one would ever object. Yet both their military and political provocations, their arrogance, and their negative attitude toward us continued.
President Ilham Aliyev also marked that entire Karabakh and East Zangezur is a construction site, and that the citizens of Azerbaijan are at the heart of all political steps.
Armenia's Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has said that his country is experiencing its highest level of security in history. Addressing the International Conference Comprehensive Security and Resilience 2025, he emphasized that the country is more independent, sovereign, and secure than ever before. According to Pashinyan, peace has been established between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and the focus now is on making decisions that ensure long-term stability. He said institutionalizing peace is essential and will safeguard Armenia's statehood for centuries. Pashinyan also noted that recognizing Azerbaijan's territorial integrity was necessary to secure Armenia's own borders. On Pashinyan's messages, we earlier spoke to Boris Novosardian, a political analyst from Yerevan. He also spoke on progress in building ties between Armenia and Turkey. Here's what he had to say.
As you know, Armenia was visited by a representative of Turkey, Mr. Kalic, for the discussion of several issues that remain between Armenia and Turkey. And I do not exclude that removal of the Mountain Karabakh graphic from the border stamp was a kind of step towards more constructive dialogue. At the same time, I don't think that the war against symbols is something that will contribute to, let's say, constructive dialogue. So I would suggest our political leaders of all countries of the region to forget about simple symbols and concentrate on pragmatic issues.
Uzbekistan's trade with China rose 8% this year, alongside a sharp rise in foreign-backed enterprises. Our Sevil Rajapova has more on that in Tashkent.
Uzbekistan is continuing to strengthen its appeal to foreign investors. As of September 1st, companies with foreign participation in the country reached 16,946, with 170 new enterprises established in just 1 month, with China remaining the leading investor. Many of these new ventures operate in key sectors, such as trade, industry, construction, IT, and communication. In 2024, trade turnover with China totaled about $12.4 billion, while in the first 6 months of 2025, that turnover rose to $6.5 billion, marking an 8% increase compared to the same period last year. At the regional level, tourism exemplifies how investment is driving broader developmental gains. Over the past 8 years, the region has attracted nearly $2 billion in investment, launched over 25,000 industrial enterprises, and doubled production output. Major infrastructure improvements include restoring canals, building a bridge over the Amu Darya River, and expanding water supply and sewage networks. New projects underway supported by Australia, Slovakia, and South Korea show the region's potential to diversify into renewable energy and high-tech industries. Together, these trends highlight how Uzbekistan is increasing its appeal to foreign investors and how regions are converting investment into industrial growth and improved infrastructure. It is Sevil Rajapova reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, Anewz.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you so much for watching and stay tuned to Anewz.